I'm Amelia Carter, 34, and I never thought I'd be standing at my front door facing two police officers with concerned expressions, while my sister Rachel hovered behind them with that smug smile. Just hours earlier, she'd called me unstable and dangerous to my face. Now she was making good on her threats. My hand trembled slightly as I reached for my phone. "Please come in, officers. I'd like you to watch this footage," I said calmly. The male officer's eyebrows shot up as the video began to play, his expression morphing from professional detachment to shock. Before I dive into this wild story, where are you watching from today? Hit that like button if you've ever dealt with toxic family drama, and subscribe to join our supportive community. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this unfolds. Growing up, Rachel and I were never particularly close. The 4-year age gap meant she was always moving on to the next stage of life, just as I was entering her previous one. But what might have been normal sibling rivalry transformed into something darker over time. Rachel, now 38, seemed to resent every achievement, every bit of attention I received. Our relationship deteriorated dramatically after our parents died in a car accident 5 years ago. The loss devastated us both, but instead of bringing us together in grief, it drove us further apart. Mom and Dad had left their family home and the majority of their inheritance to me, a decision that blindsided Rachel. They had their reasons. I had helped care for them during Dad's illness, while Rachel was busy building her life with her wealthy husband Thomas and their 2 children in another state. But Rachel never saw it that way. In her mind, she was entitled to an equal share regardless of circumstance. "They always favored you," she spat during the reading of the will. "Always precious, little Amelia." I tried reasoning with her, offering to split some assets more evenly, though the will was clear, but she refused. "Keep your charity," she said. "I don't need handouts." It might have ended there, a sad but common family rift over inheritance, if not for what happened next. While I focused on rebuilding my life and growing my interior design business after a painful divorce, Rachel was busy constructing an elaborate lie. It started with whispers at family gatherings, concerned looks from cousins, and eventually direct questions from our Aunt Catherine. "Is it true you cheated on Kyle?" Aunt Catherine asked over coffee one Sunday. Rachel mentioned it was the reason for the divorce. I nearly dropped my cup. "What? That's absolutely false. We grew apart after the miscarriage. You know that. But the damage was done." Rachel had methodically told everyone in our extended family that my marriage had ended because of my infidelity, not the crushing grief that had pulled Kyle and me in different directions after losing our baby. The cruel irony came 6 months later when I discovered through a mutual friend that Rachel had actually been having an affair with Kyle before our divorce was finalized. Text messages, hotel receipts, evidence that painted an unmistakable picture of betrayal, not by me, but by my own sister and ex-husband. When I confronted her with proof, Rachel simply shrugged. "He was unhappy with you long before I came into the picture. Don't blame me for your failed marriage." The family chose sides quickly, and most stood with Rachel. She had always been better at managing perceptions, at presenting herself as the responsible, stable sister, while painting me as impulsive and emotional. Without our parents as buffers, the family dynamics shifted entirely in her favor. Only my best friend Jessica stood firmly in my corner. We'd been friends since college, and she knew me better than anyone. "This is gaslighting," Amelia Jessica said over wine after I recounted the latest family gathering where relatives had given me cold shoulders. "Rachel is systematically isolating you from your support system." I didn't want to believe my own sister could be so calculating, but strange things began happening. I'd come home to find items moved from where I'd left them. My jewelry would be rearranged. Once I found my desk drawers completely reorganized. "You probably just forgot," Rachel suggested when I mentioned these incidents during a rare civil phone call. "You've been under a lot of stress. Maybe you should see someone about your memory issues." The final straw came when I returned from a business trip to find my late mother's wedding album had been rifled through photographs rearranged. That sacred item was the catalyst for my decision to install security cameras throughout my home. If someone was entering when I wasn't there, I needed to know. "You're being paranoid," Rachel said when she noticed a camera during an unexpected visit. "This isn't healthy behavior, Amelia." But my instincts told me otherwise. And soon those cameras would prove to be the most important investment I'd ever made. The security cameras were in place for just 3 days when they captured their first concerning footage. While I was at a client meeting, my front door opened and Rachel stepped inside using a key I didn't know she possessed. The footage showed her wandering through my house, opening drawers, checking my mail, and even scrolling through my tablet that I'd left on the kitchen counter. This confirmed what I'd suspected, but seeing it play out on video was still shocking. The invasion of privacy felt visceral, my own sister searching through my personal belongings when she thought I wouldn't know. Meanwhile, other strange occurrences accelerated. I started receiving anonymous text messages from changing numbers. "I know what you did. You don't deserve that house. Someone should check on your mental state." Items would go missing only to reappear days later in obvious places I'd already checked. Once I came home to find family photos rearranged with my face scratched out of several. When I called Jessica in panic, she came over immediately. "You need to document everything," she advised, helping me photograph the damaged pictures. This is a systematic campaign. The gaslighting intensified. At a family birthday party, I overheard Rachel telling our cousin Mark, "We're all worried about Amelia. She's been making up stories claiming someone's breaking into her house. She's even installed cameras everywhere, like she's being persecuted." "Has she seen anyone professionally?" Mark asked, concern evident in his voice. "She refuses. Classic paranoid behavior. Thomas and I have discussed whether we should intervene before she hurts herself." The conversation made me physically ill. Rachel was methodically constructing a narrative of my supposed instability, and family members were accepting it without question. That night, reviewing security footage became my new routine. And there it was, crystal clear evidence of Rachel entering my home again while I was at the party, moving objects, planting the damaged photos, and leaving with something tucked into her purse that looked like my prescription migraine medication. I decided to confront her, hoping that knowing she was caught on camera might end this bizarre campaign. I invited her for coffee and calmly showed her the footage on my phone. "This is you, Rachel. Yesterday at 3:42 p.m. Using a key I never gave you to enter my house without permission." Her expression didn't register shame or even surprise. Instead, she laughed. "Oh, Amelia, this is exactly what I've been worried about. You've edited footage to make it look like I'm entering your house. This is serious paranoia." She reached across the table to touch my hand with false concern. "I was at Pilates yesterday at that time. I have witnesses. You're creating evidence for threats that don't exist." "The timestamp is right there," I insisted. "Timestamps can be altered," she countered smoothly. "Thomas works in digital security. He's explained how easy it is." "Amelia, this is why we're concerned. You're constructing elaborate scenarios." Later that day, she'd convinced Thomas to call me. He sounded genuinely worried. "Rachel showed me the video you created," he said. "As someone who works with digital evidence, I can tell it's been tampered with. The lighting changes between frames. That's a classic sign of editing. It hadn't been edited. I knew that." But Thomas's professional background gave Rachel's accusations credibility. For a brief, terrible moment, I wondered if I could trust my own perceptions. Was I having some kind of breakdown? The thought terrified me. This was my first near defeat, the moment where the gaslighting almost succeeded. I spent a sleepless night questioning everything, wondering if stress had indeed affected my grasp on reality. The next morning, I made an appointment with a therapist. Not because I believed Rachel, but because I needed someone objective to help me process what was happening. Dr. Bennett, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a direct manner, listened carefully to my story. "What you're describing sounds like a coordinated campaign to make you doubt your perceptions," she said after I'd explained everything. "The technical term is gaslighting, named after a film where a husband manipulates his wife into believing she's losing her mind." "So you don't think I'm paranoid?" I asked, embarrassed by the naked hope in my voice. Amelia bringing security footage to a confrontation isn't paranoid. It's evidence-based. The paranoid response would be hiding in your house with weapons. You're seeking professional help and documentation. Those are rational responses to what you're experiencing. Dr. Bennett became my anchor, the first real ally besides Jessica in this increasingly disturbing situation. She suggested keeping a detailed log of incidents with dates, times, and descriptions, creating an evidence trail independent of the video footage. Meanwhile, another key player emerged. During a dinner at Rachel and Thomas's home, I noticed Thomas seemed uncomfortable whenever Rachel brought up my concerning behavior. While she was in the kitchen, he whispered to me, "Not everything is as it seems, Amelia. Be careful, but don't give up." Before I could ask what he meant, Rachel returned and Thomas's expression shifted back to polite concern. That brief interaction planted a seed of hope. Perhaps someone in Rachel's inner circle could see through her machinations. The next significant revelation came during a rare extended family gathering at our Aunt Catherine's house. Rachel had been unusually insistent that I attend, which immediately raised my suspicions. Throughout the evening, she kept refilling my wine glass and encouraging me to loosen up while maintaining her own sobriety with what she claimed was sparkling water. When Rachel left her designer handbag unattended during dinner, instinct drove me to quickly peek inside. What I found chilled me to the bone, a folder containing legal documents about contesting wills on grounds of undue influence and mental incompetence, with notes scribbled in Rachel's handwriting about my parents' estate. There were also printouts of emails between Rachel and a lawyer discussing strategies to have me declared mentally unfit to manage my inheritance. One particular note stood out: need documentation of A's instability, medical records, witness statements, find leverage. I quickly snapped photos of the documents with my phone before returning everything exactly as I'd found it. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped the bag. The documents revealed something else shocking. Despite her wealthy facade, Rachel was in severe financial trouble. A bank statement showed multiple overdue mortgage payments, credit card debt in the high five figures, and a notification of Thomas's business facing bankruptcy proceedings. Their perfect life was a house of cards on the verge of collapse. As I processed this information in Catherine's guest bathroom, a text from my cousin Sarah popped up on my phone, sent to Rachel by mistake. "She's here, looking stable unfortunately. What's our backup plan?" Sarah. My stomach dropped. Sarah, who had comforted me after my parents' funeral. Sarah, who had listened sympathetically when I confided my concerns about Rachel's behavior. Sarah, who had always insisted she wasn't taking sides in our dispute. I composed myself and returned to the dinner table, now viewing the gathering through an entirely new lens. Looking around at the family members, I wondered who else might be complicit in Rachel's scheme. The weight of this betrayal felt suffocating. Later that night, in the safety of my home, I reviewed the photos I'd taken of Rachel's documents. One name that kept appearing was Diane Forrester, a name I recognized as one of Rachel's friends who worked as a nurse administrator at the local hospital. According to the notes, Diane had offered to help with medical documentation of my supposed instability. This revelation prompted me to expand my security measures. I installed additional hidden cameras with audio recording capabilities in my living room and kitchen, common areas where Rachel might speak freely if she thought the only cameras were the visible ones she already knew about. My precautions paid off sooner than expected. 3 days later, my security system alerted me to visitors Rachel and Sarah entering my home using that unauthorized key while I was supposedly at a design consultation. In reality, I was parked down the street watching the live feed on my phone. "The place looks normal," Sarah said, glancing around my living room. "I thought you said she was declining." Rachel sighed dramatically. "She hides it well when people visit. But trust me, when she's alone, it's a different story. The paranoia, the accusations, the memory issues, classic signs of early onset conditions like our grandmother had." "And you're sure this is necessary?" Sarah sounded hesitant. "Contesting the will after all this time seems extreme. She manipulated our parents when they were vulnerable after Dad's first stroke." Rachel's voice hardened. "She shouldn't have gotten everything. Besides, have you seen what properties in this neighborhood are selling for now? This house alone is worth 3 times what it was when they died. That developer, Patrick, says the land itself is worth millions for the right project." Still having her declared incompetent. "It's for her own good," Rachel insisted. "She can't manage all this. And let's be honest, Sarah, you stand to benefit too. I haven't forgotten how you were passed over for that scholarship that Amelia got. Once I'm managing the estate, I can make things right for everyone. Mom and Dad overlooked." The conversation confirmed my worst fears. While revealing something I hadn't known, Sarah's long-standing resentment over a college scholarship I'd received years ago. Such a small thing to nurse a grudge over for more than a decade. As they continued to search my house, they discussed their next steps. Diane from the hospital would help create a record of concerning behavior. Rachel had already spoken with my primary care physician, presenting herself as my emergency contact with worries about my mental health. They planned to gradually increase family concern. until they could petition for an emergency competency hearing. After they left, I sat in my car for a long time trying to process the scope of this conspiracy. It wasn't just about the inheritance anymore. Rachel was willing to have me declared mentally incompetent, potentially stripped of my legal rights and autonomy, all for money she hadn't earned, and property she coveted. That night, I backed up all my security footage to multiple locations, cloud storage, external hard drives kept at Jessica's house, and encrypted files sent to Dr. Bennett. If Rachel was planning to discredit me, I needed irrefutable evidence that couldn't be destroyed or dismissed as the ravings of an unstable mind. The attack on my personal life was devastating enough, but Rachel's campaign soon expanded to target my interior design business. It began subtly, a few negative reviews appearing online from clients I'd never actually worked with, describing unprofessional behavior and poor design choices completely contrary to my established style and reputation. At first, I dismissed these as random internet trolls. But when 3 major clients canceled contracts within the same week, all citing concerns about stability they'd heard through mutual connections, I realized Rachel had escalated her tactics to attacking my livelihood. Lauren, my business partner of 3 years, called an urgent meeting at her house rather than our studio. "Amelia, we need to talk about what's happening," she said, her expression serious as she poured tea. "These cancellations are just the beginning. I've received several calls from concerned clients asking if you're okay and whether our business is stable." "It's Rachel," I said firmly. "She's spreading rumors to undermine me." Lauren looked uncomfortable. "I've heard that you're blaming your sister for a lot of things lately. Is it possible that you're fixating on her unfairly?" The careful wording, the concerned tone, it was exactly the approach Rachel had used with family members. A chill ran through me as I realized Rachel's influence had reached my professional circle. "Who have you been talking to about me, Lauren?" I asked directly. Her hesitation told me everything. "Your sister reached out to me last week. She's worried about you, Amelia. She mentioned episodes of paranoia, memory issues, and you believed her without speaking to me first." My voice remained calm, though my heart was racing. "She had specific examples that concerned me. And frankly, your behavior has been different lately. The security cameras in your home, the constant checking of your phone, the suspicion." She sighed. "Rachel suggested maybe you need time off. She even mentioned being willing to help financially while we restructure the business to reduce your stress." The betrayal struck deep. Lauren and I had built our business from nothing, working countless late nights and supporting each other through professional and personal challenges. Now she was entertaining secret conversations with Rachel about pushing me out of my own company. "How long have you been meeting with her?" I asked. Lauren's eyes widened. "How did you—" "Credit card statement," I lied smoothly. "You charged lunch at Oleander's 3 times this month. That's Rachel's favorite restaurant." It was a guess based on Lauren's guilty expression, but her shocked reaction confirmed I'd hit the mark. "It's not what you think," she backpedaled. Rachel approached me with concerns, yes, but also a business opportunity. She said, "With your 4 issues, you might want to step back." She offered to become a silent investor if we restructured. "And you considered this without talking to me. After everything we've built together, Amelia, be reasonable. Our biggest client just pulled a contract worth nearly 1/3 of our annual revenue. If Rachel can provide capital and connections while you sort out your personal issues, she's lying to you, Lauren." I pulled out my phone and played a short clip from my security footage, Rachel explicitly discussing her plans to undermine my business until I was financially vulnerable enough to sell the house. Lauren's face paled as she listened. "This could be edited," she said weakly, echoing Rachel's earlier defense. "You're welcome to have it analyzed by experts," I replied. "But ask yourself, who has more reason to lie? Rachel, who stands to gain millions from my downfall, or me who just wants to be left alone to run my business and live my life?" The confrontation with Lauren could have been the final blow to my business if not for my assistant Mia. Young, tech-savvy, and fiercely loyal Mia had become suspicious when client emails suddenly changed in tone or contained references to conversations that hadn't happened. "Someone's been accessing our business email," she told me privately after the meeting with Lauren. I set up a tracking pixel after the second cancellation. The account has been opened from an IP address in Rachel's neighborhood multiple times. Mia showed me the evidence she'd gathered: login times, IP addresses, and even changes tracked in our CRM system, where client notes had been subtly altered to suggest concerns or difficult interactions that never occurred. I didn't want to say anything until I was certain, Mia explained. But they're getting sloppy. That big Murray contract that canceled, I called them directly. They said they received an email from you saying we needed to postpone for 6 months due to personal health issues. I have a copy. It's not even your writing style. With Mia's help, I began rebuilding the digital security of my business while documenting the sabotage. We changed all passwords, implemented two-factor authentication, and created dummy accounts to track unauthorized access. Mia proved herself an invaluable ally, becoming the second person I could truly trust besides Jessica. The final confirmation of Lauren's betrayal came when we discovered she had shared our client list with Rachel under the guise of investment research. Heartbroken but resolute, I began preparing for the possibility of dissolving our partnership while working with Mia to salvage key client relationships. I've worked with Amelia for years, Mia told hesitant clients. These rumors are completely unfounded. In fact, we believe they're being deliberately spread by a competitor trying to damage our reputation. Would you like to see examples of similar tactics being used against other businesses? Her straightforward approach helped us retain enough clients to keep the business afloat, though the financial damage was significant. I continued gathering evidence, maintaining a detailed log of every incident, every financial loss, and every person involved in Rachel's expanding web of manipulation. The business sabotage was the most public aspect of Rachel's campaign against me, and potentially the most damaging in the long run. Without financial independence, I would be vulnerable to her schemes. But it also represented a tactical error on her part. By expanding beyond private family matters into documented business interference, she had crossed into territory with clear legal ramifications and a broader pool of witnesses. The campaign against me took an even darker turn, 3 months into this nightmare. I began experiencing disturbing symptoms, dizziness, confusion, memory lapses that couldn't be explained by stress alone. After a particularly frightening episode where I couldn't remember the drive home from a client meeting, I went to my doctor for testing. The blood tests revealed traces of benzodiazepines, psychiatric medication I had never been prescribed. At first, my doctor assumed I was taking something for anxiety without disclosing it, but my genuine shock convinced him to investigate further. These levels suggest recent consumption, he explained. And they're inconsistent, sometimes therapeutic doses, sometimes much higher. It's as if you're taking them irregularly or unknowingly. The revelation sent a chill through me. Someone was drugging me, and I had a terrible suspicion who it might be. I reviewed my security footage with new purpose, looking specifically at any time Rachel had been in my home. There it was during her last wellness check when she'd insisted on making coffee for us both. The camera caught her adding something to my mug when she thought my back was turned. Further investigation of older footage showed similar incidents. Rachel bringing me special tea when I had a cold, offering homemade smoothies during visits, always insisting I consume something she had prepared. I took this evidence to Dr. Bennett, who helped me develop a plan. I would continue to appear vulnerable while secretly protecting myself. I began pretending to drink what Rachel offered, while actually disposing of it, keeping samples for testing. I set up a system with Jessica where I would check in with her at specific times and she would call the police if I failed to respond. More damning evidence emerged when I identified Diane, Rachel's hospital friend, from security footage. She had accompanied Rachel to my house twice, once leaving with a small bag containing my hairbrush and drinking glass, presumably for DNA testing to compare with the medical records she was falsifying. The most shocking discovery was a conversation captured between Rachel and Diane in my kitchen during a time they thought I was heavily sedated in my bedroom. I had actually slipped out of the house after suspecting they'd drugged my dinner. The dosage needs to be consistent, Diane was saying. These random spikes look suspicious in blood work. I can only give her what she'll take, Rachel replied. Sometimes she barely touches her drink. Well, we need to figure something out. I've documented 3 ER visits for confusion and disorientation, but her regular doctor is asking questions. He's not fully buying the concerned sister act anymore. What about her therapist? Can we get any information there? Patient confidentiality, Diane sighed. Unless we can get her to sign a release or have her declared incompetent, we can't access those records. The incompetence hearing is still months away at best. Rachel sounded frustrated. We need to accelerate this. Thomas's creditors are getting aggressive, and that developer won't wait forever on the property deal. Don't rush this, Rachel. Medical fraud has serious consequences. I'm already risking my license helping you. Despite my precautions, their plot nearly succeeded when Rachel somehow managed to contaminate my dinner during a family gathering. I had been careful about food and drinks, but somehow missed her opportunity. Within an hour, I experienced extreme dizziness and confusion. Jessica, who had attended as my support, immediately recognized something was wrong and drove me to the emergency room. By terrible coincidence, or perhaps by design, Diane was working that night. She quickly took control of my case, telling the attending physician about my history of similar episodes and my sister's ongoing concerns about cognitive decline. In my drugged state, I was unable to effectively advocate for myself. Rachel arrived shortly after presenting herself as my next of kin and primary caregiver. I watched through a haze as she tearfully told the doctors about my paranoid accusations and declining ability to care for myself. I think we need to consider a temporary psychiatric hold, I heard Diane suggest to the doctor. For her own safety. Her sister can petition for temporary guardianship while we evaluate. This was my second near defeat, lying in a hospital bed, drugged and disoriented, watching as Rachel nearly succeeded in having me committed and gaining control over my affairs. In that moment, I truly feared I would lose everything: my freedom, my home, my business, and my dignity. The unexpected intervention came from James, a hospital social worker who had been called in for the potential psychiatric case. Something about the dynamics between Rachel, Diane, and me triggered his professional instincts. "Miss Carter, can we speak privately for a moment?" he asked me, his expression neutral but his eyes alert. Rachel immediately objected. "She's confused and disoriented." "I should stay." "Standard procedure, I'm afraid," James replied firmly. Patient advocacy requires a private conversation to ensure autonomy. Once alone, James spoke quietly and directly. "Something doesn't add up here. Your clinical presentation doesn't match your sister's description of chronic issues. This looks more like acute substance reaction. Are you taking any medications?" Through my mental fog, I managed to convey that I suspected I'd been drugged and directed him to call Jessica, who waited in the lobby with a copy of my evidence file. James became my third crucial ally. He ordered comprehensive toxicology screens against Diane's protests and ensured I wasn't left alone with either Rachel or Diane. He documented the inconsistencies in my medical record and filed a formal report questioning the previous ER visit documentation. "This is a classic case of medical gaslighting," he told me later when I had recovered. "Unfortunately, I've seen it before in elder abuse cases and contested guardianship situations. Your sister nearly succeeded because she had medical accomplices and a carefully constructed narrative." The hospital incident marked a turning point. James's intervention had created an official record questioning Rachel's version of events. My detailed documentation, combined with Jessica's advocacy and the toxicology results, had prevented a catastrophe. But Rachel and her allies had shown how far they were willing to go and how dangerous they could be. As I recovered from the drugging incident, I began investigating the references Rachel had made to a developer and property deal. If this was just about inheritance jealousy, why the urgent timeline? Why risk criminal charges for what was ultimately a comfortable but not extravagant inheritance? The answer emerged through careful research and an unexpected ally. Using property records and local business filings, I discovered that a development company called Meridian Ventures had been systematically purchasing land in my neighborhood over the past year. The surrounding area, once solidly middle class, was experiencing rapid gentrification, with property values tripling in some cases. More digging revealed that Meridian was represented by Patrick Donovan, a real estate developer with a questionable reputation and multiple lawsuits for fraudulent practices. His name appeared in Rachel's notes I had photographed, along with potential property valuations far exceeding what I had believed my parents' house was worth. The full picture came into focus when Thomas, Rachel's husband, requested to meet me privately at a coffee shop far from their home. "I can't stay long," he said nervously, constantly checking the door. "Rachel thinks I'm at a business meeting." Thomas looked haggard, the confident financial advisor replaced by a man clearly under tremendous stress. He slid a folder across the table. "You need to see these." Rachel doesn't know I have copies. The documents outlined the true state of their finances. Thomas's investment firm had suffered catastrophic losses after backing a fraudulent cryptocurrency venture. They were mortgaged well beyond their means, with credit card debt approaching 6 figures, and Thomas was facing potential securities fraud charges for misleading clients. We're not just in financial trouble, Amelia. We're on the verge of bankruptcy and possibly criminal charges. Rachel sees your inheritance as our only way out. Why are you showing me this? I asked cautiously. Because she's going too far. His voice dropped. The property scheme with Patrick, the drugging, the medical manipulation. I never agreed to any of that. I thought she was just going to contest the will, legally argue your parents weren't of sound mind. He took a shaky breath. When I confronted her after the hospital incident, she threatened to claim I was the one who mismanaged our finances and defrauded clients. She has documents with my signature that she claims prove it. If I go down for securities fraud, I'll lose custody of the kids. Thomas's revelation explained Rachel's desperate escalation, but it also presented a new ally with insider knowledge of her plans. Though I couldn't fully trust him, his fear for his children seemed genuine, and the financial documents matched what I'd already uncovered. There's more, Thomas continued. The property isn't just valuable for the house. Your parents' lot sits at a critical junction for Meridian's development plans. Without it, they can't connect their other properties for the luxury complex they're planning. Patrick has offered Rachel 3 times market value contingent on a quick, clean sale with no complications. And I'm the complication, I stated flatly. Yes. The inheritance terms require you to maintain ownership for 10 years before selling or the proceeds go to charity. Rachel found a loophole. If you're declared incompetent, a guardian can petition to sell for your care needs, bypassing the restriction. This explained the accelerated timeline and increasingly dangerous tactics. It wasn't just about getting the property. It was about getting it quickly enough to save Rachel and Thomas from financial ruin and giving Patrick what he needed for his development project. Armed with this knowledge, I began investigating Patrick Donovan and Meridian Ventures more thoroughly. I discovered they had used similar tactics before finding properties with vulnerable owners using pressure or manipulation to force quick sales below true value, then flipping them for massive profits. Just as concerning was the 4th betrayal I uncovered during this investigation. My Aunt Margaret, the trustee of my parents' estate, had been secretly working with Rachel. Financial records showed unusual payments from Meridian to a consulting company registered in Margaret's name. The trustee, who was supposed to protect my parents' wishes, had been corrupted. When confronted, Margaret was unapologetic. Your mother always favored you, even though I was the one who helped her build her business. Being made trustee instead of beneficiary was the final insult. Rachel's plan gives me the recognition I deserve. The most damning evidence came when my security system captured Rachel in my home office, practicing my signature on various documents. Later reviews showed she had brought property transfer forms and was creating forged authorizations. The footage clearly showed her face the documents and the deliberate forgery attempts, irrefutable evidence of criminal intent. With Thomas's help, I gained access to the complete property scheme. Patrick had created a shell company that would purchase my home at below market value once Rachel gained control through guardianship. The property would then be immediately transferred to Meridian at its true value, millions more than I would have received, with the difference split between Rachel and Patrick. Margaret would receive a consulting fee for facilitating the arrangement. I consulted with a lawyer specializing in elder law and estate fraud, sharing the evidence I had gathered while maintaining my appearance of ignorance to Rachel's group. The attorney confirmed what I suspected: the conspiracy had crossed multiple legal boundaries, from fraud to forgery to potentially criminal medical malpractice. This is one of the most comprehensive cases of predatory guardian manipulation I've ever seen, the lawyer told me. The good news is you've documented everything meticulously. The bad news is they're getting desperate, which makes them more dangerous. Her advice was to continue gathering evidence while taking precautions for my safety. Don't confront them yet. People willing to drug you and falsify medical records might take even more extreme measures if cornered. The property scheme revelation transformed my understanding of the situation. This wasn't just family dysfunction or inheritance jealousy. It was a calculated criminal conspiracy involving multiple parties, millions of dollars, and people willing to destroy my life for financial gain. The stakes were far higher than I had initially realized, and so were the potential consequences for everyone involved. The final phase of Rachel's campaign began at what should have been a joyful occasion, our cousin Mark's wedding. I had debated attending knowing I'd face the family members who had been poisoned against me, but Dr. Bennett encouraged me to go. Isolation serves their narrative, she advised. Showing up composed and rational contradicts the story Rachel has been telling. I arrived at the reception, looking my best polished professional and showing no signs of the turmoil that had consumed my life. Several relatives seemed surprised by my appearance, clearly having expected the disheveled, unstable person Rachel had described. Rachel, however, had anticipated this possibility. During the reception, she staged a carefully orchestrated incident that would become the breaking point in her campaign against me. I was chatting with an elderly great-aunt when Rachel approached with her children, 9-year-old Emma and 7-year-old Nathan. "Kids, say hello to your Aunt Amelia," she said, her voice sugary. The children hung back, looking uncomfortable. "It's okay," Rachel urged. "Aunt Amelia is having a good day today." "What's that supposed to mean?" I asked quietly, conscious of nearby relatives watching. "Nothing," she smiled tightly. "Emma, show Aunt Amelia the drawing you made." Emma reluctantly handed me a folded paper. I opened it to find a disturbing crayon drawing of what appeared to be a woman with a knife standing over sleeping children. My name was scrawled at the bottom in childish handwriting that didn't match Emma's school projects I'd seen previously. "Emma, did you draw this?" I asked gently. Before she could answer, Rachel snatched the paper. "See, this is what I was worried about," she said loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. "First, the paranoid accusations now questioning my daughter kids come with me. Aunt Amelia isn't feeling well." As they walked away, I heard Rachel loudly telling a group of relatives, "She's getting worse. Now she's fixating on the children. We've had to install special locks." The whispers spread throughout the reception. Family members who had been cordial earlier now avoided me entirely. I later discovered Rachel had been showing people the disturbing drawing, claiming I had given it to Emma with threatening messages about visiting them at night. The incident achieved exactly what Rachel intended. Within days, nearly every family member had cut contact with me completely. Those who had been on the fence were now firmly convinced of my dangerous state. The fifth and most devastating betrayal came when I learned Rachel had manipulated my ex-husband Kyle into filing a restraining order against me, claiming I had been stalking him and his new girlfriend, who unsurprisingly was actually Rachel herself. The petition contained deeply personal information. Only Rachel could have known details about my miscarriage grief, private conversations from my marriage, even references to intimate moments that Kyle would never have shared voluntarily. Rachel had clearly been collecting this ammunition for years, waiting for the perfect moment to deploy it. The restraining order was a masterstroke in Rachel's campaign. It created an official legal record of my supposedly erratic behavior, one that would be difficult to explain away in any competency hearing. Stalking my ex-husband perfectly fit the narrative of an unhinged woman unable to move on from past relationships. Then came the most frightening development yet. I began finding threatening notes around my house, written in what appeared to be my own handwriting. They all deserve to suffer. Rachel's children should fear me. No one will believe them once they're gone. I knew immediately I hadn't written them, but the handwriting was disturbingly similar to mine. Reviewing security footage, I caught Rachel practicing forging my handwriting during one of her unauthorized entries, carefully copying from old birthday cards and notes she had kept. The situation escalated when police officers appeared at my door responding to a concerned neighbor report about shouting and disturbing noises from my house. Though they found nothing amiss, the incident created another official record that would support Rachel's narrative. Everything culminated when I returned home one evening to find my front door ajar. Inside furniture was overturned, mirrors shattered, and disturbing messages were scrawled on walls in red paint. "They're all against me and make them pay." Before I could even process the scene, police sirens wailed outside. Rachel had staged a break-in and vandalism in my own home, making it appear I had suffered a violent psychotic episode. She had called the police herself, telling them her mentally unstable sister was having a dangerous breakdown and threatening harm. This was the moment from the beginning of my story. Standing at my door facing concerned police officers with Rachel behind them, wearing that self-satisfied expression she thought I couldn't see. Her plan was perfect, except for one crucial detail: my comprehensive security system had captured everything. Every entry, every planted item, every act of vandalism, all recorded in high definition from multiple angles with clear audio of Rachel narrating her actions to someone on her phone, presumably Diane or Sarah. The police will have to take her for psychiatric evaluation after this. Rachel's voice rang clearly on the recording. Once she's in the system, the competency hearing will be fast-tracked. We'll have control of the property within weeks, not months. As the male officer's expression transformed from concern to shock, watching the footage, I knew the tide had finally turned. Rachel's campaign of destruction had reached its breaking point, not mine as she had intended, but her own. "Ma'am, we need to see all of this footage," the male officer, whose name tag read Rodriguez, said after watching the first damning video on my phone. His partner, Officer Chen, was already radioing for a supervisor while keeping a wary eye on Rachel, who had begun protesting loudly. "She's manipulating you. That video is edited. My sister is mentally ill and technologically sophisticated. She's been planning this for months." "Miss Carter, please remain calm," Officer Chen told Rachel firmly. "We need to investigate these allegations thoroughly." I retrieved my laptop and external hard drive containing months of meticulously organized evidence. "I have everything categorized by date, location, and individuals involved," I explained. "The full security system backs up to cloud storage as well, so there are timestamps and verification hashes that prove nothing has been altered." As we moved to my dining room table, Rachel's confidence began visibly crumbling. Her perfectly cultivated image of the concerned sister was rapidly unraveling as Officer Rodriguez reviewed clip after clip of her unauthorized entries tampering with my belongings and explicitly discussing her plans to have me declared incompetent. One particularly damning video showed Rachel and Diane discussing the drugging. "The Ativan should be undetectable after 72 hours, Diane was saying. "The Haldol leaves traces longer, but we can explain that as necessary emergency medication if anyone asks." "And you've documented the episodes in her medical record?" Rachel asked. 3 separate ER visits, all consistent with paranoid features and cognitive impairment, Diane confirmed. Plus, the alterations to her primary care records showing a 2-year decline. "It's enough for an initial psychiatric hold when we're ready." Another clip captured Rachel and Sarah placing the disturbing drawings supposedly created by Emma. "Are you sure this looks like a child drew it?" Sarah asked. "Trust me, no one questions children's artwork too closely," Rachel replied. "Besides, I had Nathan scribble his version too. Different handwriting, same story." The officers watched in growing disbelief as the scope of the conspiracy unfolded before them. The business sabotage, the medical fraud, the property scheme with Patrick the forged signatures, all captured in Rachel's own words. "This is extensive," Officer Rodriguez said finally. "Miss Carter, Amelia, how long has this been going on?" "The campaign against me began about a year ago, but intensified dramatically over the past 6 months," I explained. "I've been documenting everything while seeking help from trusted professionals. I showed them Dr. Bennett's reports and the lawyer's assessments, all properly dated and notarized." As we reviewed the evidence, Rachel's phone rang repeatedly. She lunged for it, but Officer Chen intercepted it. The screen showed Patrick calling. "Your developer friend seems anxious to reach you," I commented. "I wonder if he knows his property scheme is falling apart as we speak." Rachel's face contorted with rage, the mask of concerned sister completely abandoned. "You think you've won. You have no idea what I've set in motion. There are records of your condition in multiple medical systems now. People have seen you threatening my children. Your business reputation is in tatters. Even with some security videos who will believe you over an entire system that documents your decline." Her outburst was of course captured perfectly by both my security system and the officer's body cameras. "Miss Carter, that sounds remarkably like an admission and a threat," Officer Rodriguez observed calmly. Before Rachel could respond, the front door opened and Thomas entered looking grim but determined. I had texted him while the officers were reviewing footage. "Officers, I'm Thomas Carter, Rachel's husband. I have additional evidence you should see regarding this situation." He placed a USB drive on the table. "These are financial records showing the true motivation behind my wife's actions, as well as communications between Rachel Patrick Donovan and Margaret Fletcher regarding the property scheme." Rachel's face drained of color. "You treacherous bastard," she hissed. "After everything I've done to save us," Thomas interrupted. You were willing to destroy your sister's life, drug her, have her institutionalized, all to cover up your own financial mistakes. There's nothing left to save Rachel. As if on cue, Rachel's phone rang again. This time, Officer Chen answered it on speakerphone. "Rachel, we've got a problem," Patrick's voice came through clearly. "The bank is asking questions about the property transfer paperwork. They're saying some signatures might be forged. We need to accelerate the commitment process, or..." Mr. Donovan, Officer Chen interrupted. "This is Officer Chen, Portland Police. I'd advise you to contact an attorney immediately and come to the station to make a statement." The silence on the other end was deafening before the call abruptly ended. Over the next several hours, the initial two officers were joined by detectives as the full scope of the conspiracy was documented. Rachel was taken to the station for formal questioning, while I provided comprehensive statements and turned over copies of all evidence. The officers were particularly disturbed by the medical fraud aspects of the case. In my 15 years on the force, I've seen financial elder abuse, and I've seen gaslighting in domestic cases, but I've never seen them combined with medical fraud at this level, Detective Warren told me. The premeditation here is extraordinary. As dawn broke, I sat exhausted but relieved in my living room, the house now quiet after hours of police activity. The immediate danger had passed. Rachel was in custody, and the authorities were pursuing Diane, Sarah, Patrick, and Margaret with warrants for evidence collection. Thomas, who had been granted immunity for his cooperation, sat across from me, looking shell-shocked. "I should have come forward sooner," he said quietly. "I knew things had gone too far months ago." "Why didn't you?" I asked. He stared at his hands. Fear. Rachel had manufactured evidence that I was solely responsible for our financial collapse. She threatened to use it for full custody of the kids if I didn't support her story about you. He looked up, his expression haunted. I told myself I was protecting Emma and Nathan, but really, I was just a coward. "What happens to them now?" I asked, thinking of my niece and nephew who were innocent victims in their mother's schemes. "They're with my parents tonight." I don't know what happens next." His voice broke. "How do you explain to children that their mother tried to destroy their aunt's life for money?" There was no easy answer to that question. As Thomas left to return to his children, I knew the legal and emotional aftermath of Rachel's campaign was just beginning. But for the first time in months, I could breathe freely in my own home, no longer afraid of what new attack might come next. The legal consequences for Rachel and her accomplices unfolded over the following months. The evidence I had gathered proved insurmountable, leading to multiple criminal charges against all involved. Rachel faced the most severe charges: attempted fraud breaking and entering, forgery, defamation, and conspiracy to commit medical fraud. The prosecution was particularly focused on the drugging incidents, which they classified as assault with intent to cause bodily harm. Despite hiring expensive attorneys, Rachel eventually accepted a plea deal, resulting in a 5-year prison sentence and substantial financial restitution. Diane lost her nursing license permanently and received a suspended sentence with probation for her role in the medical fraud. Her career in healthcare was effectively over, a fitting consequence for someone who had violated her professional oath so thoroughly. Sarah and Patrick received lesser sentences for their roles as accomplices, though Patrick's development company faced additional investigations into their business practices that uncovered patterns of similar schemes targeting vulnerable property owners. Aunt Margaret was removed as trustee of the estate and ordered to repay all consulting fees she had received from Meridian Ventures. The family ostracism she had helped orchestrate against me now rebounded upon her as relatives learned the full truth. The resolution of my business partnership with Lauren was surprisingly amicable once she understood the extent of Rachel's manipulation. She was genuinely horrified by the evidence and offered a heartfelt apology for doubting me. "I should have trusted you, not a near stranger with an agenda," she admitted. "I'll understand if you can't forgive that breach of trust." Rather than continuing a partnership built on a damaged foundation, we agreed to dissolve the business, equitably dividing clients and projects based on who had the strongest relationship with each. Lauren started her own firm, focusing on commercial spaces, while I rebuilt my business with a residential focus. The true silver lining was Mia's loyalty and competence throughout the ordeal. When I offered her a partnership in my restructured business, she accepted enthusiastically. "I've learned more about business design and human nature in this crisis than I would have in 10 normal years," she told me. Plus, I've always wanted to be more than an assistant. Our new partnership brought fresh energy and perspective to the business. Surprisingly, the publicity surrounding the case once the truth emerged actually generated interest in our work. People were fascinated by the designer who had outmaneuvered a complex conspiracy while maintaining her professional standards. The family reconciliation process was more complicated. Many relatives who had shunned me now reached out with awkward apologies and expressions of disbelief at Rachel's actions. Some seemed genuinely remorseful for believing the worst about me without evidence. Others appeared more concerned with being on the right side now that the truth had emerged publicly. I established clear boundaries with each person based on their past actions and current sincerity. Those who had actively participated in Rachel's campaign received polite but firm distance. Those who had merely been misled but showed genuine contrition were gradually welcomed back into my life, though the relationships would never be quite the same. Thomas faced a different kind of struggle, rebuilding a life for himself and his children with Rachel, incarcerated and their financial security destroyed. Despite our complicated history, I couldn't help but feel for Emma and Nathan, who were innocent victims of their mother's schemes. After careful consideration, I established a trust fund for their education structured, so Thomas couldn't access it directly, but the children's future needs would be secured. We developed a respectful co-parenting relationship as he worked to explain their mother's absence in age-appropriate ways. I tell them she made some big mistakes and is facing consequences, he explained during one of their visits. I don't want to demonize her completely, she's still their mother, but I also can't let them think what she did was acceptable. My personal healing journey continued with Dr. Bennett, whose insightful guidance had been crucial throughout the ordeal. The trauma of being systematically gaslit, drugged, and nearly stripped of my autonomy left deep psychological wounds that would take time to heal. What you experienced was extraordinary gaslighting, not just questioning your perception of reality, but actively manipulating that reality, Dr. Bennett explained. The fact that you maintained your grip on truth speaks to remarkable psychological resilience. I established new security protocols in my personal life, careful vetting of new relationships, clear boundaries with everyone, and maintaining documentation habits that had served me well during the crisis. The security systems remained in place, though I was gradually able to stop checking footage compulsively as the hypervigilance eased. The stronger relationships that emerged from this ordeal became my foundation. Jessica, who had stood by me from the beginning, remained my closest friend. Mia evolved from employee to trusted business partner and friend. James from the hospital stayed in touch, eventually joining the board of a nonprofit I established to help victims of similar psychological abuse. The most profound changes were internal. Having faced systematic attempts to make me doubt my own perceptions, I developed unshakable trust in my instincts. The woman who emerged from this ordeal was more decisive, more discerning about relationships, and more confident in her boundaries. I also discovered unexpected compassion, not for Rachel's actions, which remained unforgivable, but for the desperate insecurity that drove her lifelong jealousy. Somewhere beneath the manipulative adult was a child who had never felt secure in her worth, who believed love and success were zero-sum games where my gain meant her loss. 3 years after that night, when police officers stood on my doorstep, I hosted a dinner party in the renovated family home. Around my table sat the people who had proven themselves true friends: Jessica, Mia, Dr. Bennett, James, and a few new friends who had entered my life after the storm had passed. As we shared wine and laughter, I looked around at these faces and felt profound gratitude. The home that Rachel had coveted so desperately had been transformed from a battleground to a sanctuary. The inheritance that had triggered such destructive greed now funded not only my rebuilt life, but also the nonprofit helping others navigate similar situations. To truth and resilience, I proposed as a toast, raising my glass. And to the family we choose. The crystal clinked as my guests echoed the sentiment. In that moment, surrounded by genuine connection, I realized the final victory over Rachel's campaign wasn't just surviving it, it was thriving beyond it, creating a life richer and more authentic than the one she had tried to destroy. Have you ever experienced gaslighting or had a family member betray your trust? How did you handle it and rebuild afterward? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video if it resonated with you, subscribe to join our supportive community, and share with someone who might need to hear that they're not alone in facing family betrayal. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, sometimes our greatest strength emerges from our most challenging moments. Until next time, take care of yourself and trust your instincts.